The guards at Kimpo Air Base aren't expecting anything unusual that morning. The war is technically over. The armistice was signed weeks ago. Flights are routine again. Then someone on the runway looks up. A jet is coming in low. Too low, from the wrong direction. At first it doesn't register as a threat. No warning sirens, no scramble order. Just a single aircraft lining up like it belongs there. Then someone realizes what it is. Not an American jet, not a friendly escort. A North Korean MiG-15. The aircraft drops its gear and touches down on a United States airbase like it's making a scheduled arrival. No evasive maneuvers, no gunfire, no chase. It rolls to a stop. For 3 years, this jet had been the most dangerous thing in the sky over Korea. Now it's sitting intact on American concrete. The canopy opens, a young pilot climbs out. He doesn't run, he doesn't resist. He reaches into the cockpit and tears something in half. A portrait of Kim Il-sung. Only then do the soldiers understand. This isn't an attack, it's a defection. And nobody on that base yet understands what just fell into their hands. The pilot's name is No Kum-sok. He is not a hero. He is not famous. He isn't even particularly experienced. He is just 21 years old. American soldiers surround him with rifles raised, unsure whether this is a trick or a miracle. No Kum-sok doesn't speak much English. He doesn't need to. He keeps pointing at the torn portrait in his hands, then at himself, then at the ground. Surrender. Only later do interrogators realize something strange. He isn't asking for money. He isn't demanding protection. He isn't bargaining, because he has no idea what he's just done. For 3 years, the United States had been desperate to get its hands on this exact aircraft. The MiG-15 had dominated the skies over MiG Alley. It climbed faster, it hit harder, and every time it was damaged, it vanished back across the Yalu River. American pilots fought it, died fighting it, guessed at its weaknesses in the middle of combat, but no one had ever been able to study one intact. So the United States launched a secret offer, Operation Moolah, $100,000, asylum, a new life, all for a single thing. A MiG-15 landed safely. No Kum-sok had never heard of it. He didn't defect for money. He didn't defect for politics. He defected because he wanted out of hunger, out of surveillance, out of a country where pilots were expendable tools, not men. And by accident, he had just delivered the most valuable prize of the entire Korean Air War, an untouched enemy jet, right after the armistice, at a moment when no one was supposed to be flying at all. What looked like a quiet surrender was about to turn into an intelligence earthquake. To the soldiers on the runway, it's just a strange enemy plane. To the men who've been fighting this war in the air, it's something else entirely. For 3 years, American pilots had been chasing this machine without ever touching it. They fought shadows. They fought guesses. They fought assumptions. Every MiG they shot at either exploded or escaped back into China, and now one was sitting there, whole, fueled, undamaged. This wasn't supposed to happen. The MiG-15 was the reason daylight bombing had nearly stopped. It climbed higher than escort fighters could easily follow. It attacked once, brutally, then disappeared upward like it had never been there. Sabre pilots learned its habits only by surviving it. They guessed where it stalled. They guessed when it locked up. They guessed how much speed it could bleed before dying. Every one of those guesses had cost lives. Now the guessing was over. Within hours, the jet is surrounded by engineers instead of soldiers. Panels are opened. Measurements taken. Serial numbers photographed. The aircraft is rushed out of Korea before anyone can even argue about who owns it. Because this jet isn't just a trophy, it's a confession. A confession of what the enemy built well and what it built dangerously wrong. And for the first time, American pilots are about to find out whether the MiG had been beating them because it was better or because no one understood it yet. The MiG doesn't stay in Korea long. Within days it's disassembled, crated, and flown south, then west away from the war entirely. No press, no announcements, just quiet urgency. Because the people waiting for it already know what it represents. At a remote test base, The jet is reassembled piece by piece, not by mechanics rushing for combat readiness, but by engineers who want answers. This is where the MiG stops being a rumor and becomes a problem to be solved. Test pilots climb into the cockpit carefully, not because they're afraid of enemy fire, but because no one knows how this aircraft behaves when pushed too far. The first flights are conservative. Straight lines, gentle climbs, careful turns, and almost immediately, myths begin to die. Yes, the MiG climbs fast, brutally fast. At altitude, it still feels alive when other jets feel tired, but then the limits appear. Push it too hard in a turn, and the controls grow heavy. Pull just a little too much at the wrong speed, and the aircraft snaps toward a spin that does not forgive mistakes. Recovery isn't guaranteed. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Engineers mark it down. High altitude interceptor, short engagements only, deadly in the vertical, but dangerous if mishandled. Then come the guns. Powerful, devastating, but slow firing. Designed for brief firing windows, not long tracking shots. Suddenly, everything Sabre pilots experienced in combat makes sense. The MiG wasn't unbeatable, it was specialized. It punished pilots who fought it the wrong way and betrayed pilots who stayed too long. And that realization changes something fundamental, because once you understand the trap, you stop falling into it. Nothing about jet combat changes overnight. There's no announcement, no new manual printed the next morning, no official doctrine update stamped and approved. What changes is how pilots think. Because for the first time, jet combat isn't being guessed at from gun camera film and survivor stories. It's being measured, mapped, understood. Sabre pilots had always known something felt wrong in Megali. Now they know why. They stop chasing climbs they can't win. They stop tightening turns that only bleed speed. They stop mistaking aggression for control. Instead, they start doing something that feels unnatural. They disengage. They let Megas go, not because they're afraid, but because they finally understand the exchange rate between altitude, speed, and survival. Miss your shot. Leave. Lose position. Climb away. Don't finish the fight. Reset it. This mindset would have sounded cowardly just months earlier. Now it's how you stay alive. And it works. Encounters become shorter, cleaner, more deliberate. MiGs still strike fast, but fewer Americans fall into the vertical trap. And MiGs pilots notice the Americans aren't following anymore. They aren't pulling up into losing fights. They aren't slowing down to force kills. The sky changes. Not louder, not calmer, smarter. What emerges isn't dominance, it's restraint. Jet combat stops looking like a duel of courage and starts looking like a contest of positioning. The pilots who survive longest aren't the boldest. They're the ones who leave first. The man who delivered this knowledge never fired a shot. No Kumsok doesn't become a hero. He doesn't give speeches. He doesn't celebrate. He disappears into debriefings, translators, and paperwork. He tells the same story again and again, that he wasn't chasing money, that he didn't know about the reward, that he just wanted out. And in a way, that's what makes the story unsettling. 3 years of jet combat, hundreds of pilots, thousands of sorties, and the biggest breakthrough comes from one quiet decision made in 17 minutes of flight. Not by a tactician, not by an ace, but by someone who chose to land instead of fight. After the tests are done, the MiG is retired from secrecy. The war moves on. Technology advances, but the lesson stays. Jets don't forgive instinct. They don't reward courage alone. They demand discipline. The world's first jet dogfights didn't produce a clear winner. They produced understanding, and that understanding reshaped every fighter that followed. Because once humans learned that machines could outrun instinct, survival meant learning to think faster than fear. The MiGs that landed by accident didn't just cross a border, it ended an era of guessing and forced jet combat to finally grow up.